Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Employee to Boss podcast. I'm your host, Haley Hayhurst. Today, I wanted to do a episode titled New Year, New Podcast because, everyone talks about New Year, New Me, and this is around the time where people start planning out what they want to do for the year. And so I wanted to teach you how to start a podcast in the new year. This is going to be a very, overview of what you need to do to actually start your podcast in the new year. But I will start off by saying you just need to start, okay? You don't want it to be another year goes by and you don't have a podcast. You don't want to, 6 months into the year, you're like, oh yeah, let me now start that podcast. I wish I started my podcast sooner, and so does everyone else that has a podcast. We all wish we started sooner, so my advice to you is to actually take action on the goal that you want. And if that goal is to start a podcast, start learning how to start a podcast and then record right away. Take that aligned action with whatever your heart is desiring. So that is how I wanted to start this episode, but let's get into how to start a podcast. So I help so many people start a podcast each year. Last year, I helped about 10 people start their shows, and this year I have a very ambitious goal of 50 people, and I have already helped one person launch their show, and it is January 5th. So this is a really big goal that I have, but I am very excited to help so many people become podcasters, because when you become a podcaster, you are able to connect with a new audience, be seen as an expert in your industry. You are able to build your credibility. You're able to get in front of new eyes. You're able to be seen in a new way. You're able to grow your audience and your social media following by having a podcast. You are able to do so many more things by having a podcast. If you are a business coach, having a podcast will help you reach a new audience, the ideal audience that you want. It'll help you convert some more customers. And whenever I am looking for a coach to hire, I always want to hire someone who goes above and beyond, right? Because I'm a very ambitious person. So I'm guessing the people who you work with are too. And so imagine a potential customer coming to your social media page or your website, and they see, oh, she is a business coach, but she also has a podcast, but she's also an author, but she's also whatever it is. That just adds another level of, you being the person that they want to work with. And so that's what I want you to achieve. I want you to be able to actually have that amazing credibility and connect with the amazing people who want to work with you because they see you and the hard work that you do. Imagine if you start tomorrow and 6 months from now, you put out one episode a week. Let me do some math. You would have 24 episodes in 6 months. And those would be 24 opportunities for you to reach a new audience, get in front of new eyes. And really, I don't know where my marketing would be without a podcast, because I would have to be coming up with so much more content if I didn't have a podcast. So for you, you're able to create social media graphics. You're able to repurpose your podcast into a blog. You're able to do so many things with this, hour-long content piece that you're creating that it is so much more than that. So I want you to envision yourself 6 months from now with a podcast and think about how that feels. And I can guarantee you it feels great. Podcasts can be a lot of work, but if you're in a place that you can outsource the editing or the marketing, or you're looking for a coach. I have people come to me because they need a podcast mentor, a podcast coach. I definitely help them become like the heroes of their podcast and reach all these new people that they are hoping to. And I keep them in track and all of those fun things. So, okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty of actually how to start a podcast. Step number 1, of course, you need to come up with an idea. You need to come up with a topic, but so much more than that. So I'll share my story for an example. I wanted to start a business entrepreneurial podcast, but I'm a podcast producer, right? And so I wanted to tie the two together. I didn't want to just have a show about podcasting because I thought that that would not be, the best use of my time. So I decided to start a podcast about how to start a business and the journey, because I love talking to people, as you do also, I'm guessing. And so I wanted to interview people about how they started as an employee and then became their own boss. I thought that that would be super interesting, and it has been. So I wanted to tie my podcast producing into it. So I interview people with podcasts, so who are entrepreneurs and also started a podcast, and then we talk about their marketing and all those fun things. So my idea started with, a podcast about podcasting, but then developed into what it is now. So I want you to sit down and start journaling out or recording your ideas. That's a good way for podcasts to start, right? Sitting down in front of a microphone and talking about what you want to talk about, and just come up with that topic. And the deeper you can go, the more niche you can go, the better it will be, and the easier it will be to reach your target audience. Okay. So that's the first step. Come up with that idea. The next one is to actually solidify those ideas. So this comes down to asking maybe your friends and family and business connections for their thoughts on your idea, or coming to someone like me who's in the podcast industry all day and all night, and this is all I do. Coming to someone like me and just running the idea by me. I fully support that. My DMs are open. I will not charge you. So you can always just send me a message and we can go from there. But solidify that idea. And with this comes, of course, the thing that most people have the hardest time with, coming up with a name for your podcast. So this is something that you're actually going to need to just accept. Like, the name of your podcast is hard to decide on, but you just need to go for it. So make a list of your ideas. Think about which one, like if you were your ideal audience, which one would appeal to you the most, and then just stick with it. Things can change about your podcast, your branding, your logo, your music, your intro and outro. All these things can change, and in a way, your podcast title can change, but the podcast title is something that you should, stick with. This is how people are going to find you. Doing a podcast rebrand can be really hard. So make sure that you're choosing something that feels good to you in the long term. Remember, podcasting is not about the short term. Podcasting is about the long term, because it can take time for it to pick up traction and see the results that you want, but in the long run, it is worth it. So think about your name, and then go into the fun parts of like your branding and marketing and all those fun things, which we'll talk about in a second. So number 3 is actually figuring out your target audience. So if you're a business coach or a coach in any way, it might be easy for you because I'm guessing your target audience is who your client is. So you probably already have like your client's ideal client avatar and all these things that we learn how to do in business when we're looking for our clients. So this may be easy. For anyone who's not a business coach or a coach, this might be a little bit harder, but just think about like who you're speaking to. So right now I'm speaking to you and I know who you are. I mean, literally, I don't know who you are, but in my head and in the marketing I'm going to do for this and in this content I'm creating, I know who you are. And so think about like who you want to talk to and who you think you can impact the most and who you think will learn from you and potentially buy from you. So, not all podcasts are set up to make money. You can run ads in your podcast if you wanted to, or you can do something like what I do and what all of my clients do actually, which is using a podcast as a marketing tool to reach the right people to come buy from your business. That's another topic for another episode about like making money from your podcast. And honestly, if you are starting a podcast to make money, you're going to be frustrated. It's just that simple. Unless you already have like a brand that you've created and you're adding a podcast to that, it may be hard to make money in the beginning, especially from sponsors. So if you are looking to quit your full-time job and start a podcast and live off that, I'm not shooting you down. I'm just saying, think about it. Think about it a little bit. So yes, figure out your target audience. And if you've never heard of like an ideal client avatar, go look up those and just use it in the context of creating your ideal listener and who you think like that person is. Now we get down into the actual recording part. So I'm not going to go too into the technical side of things. Of course, you need a microphone, you need a quiet space to record, you need a software to edit your podcast, and then you need to find a podcast hosting platform for it to actually be published to streaming platforms. So my favorite piece of advice to share with you is to pretend like you're recording your trailer episode. So just sit down. If you don't have a microphone yet, no worries. This will not be published. You can do this in the memo apps or the voice app on your smartphone or whatever it may be. Just find a place that you can record and listen to yourself speak, because thankfully, none of my clients have struggled with this that I know of, at least, where they hate the sound of their voice, but that is pretty common. A lot of people hate the sound of their voice, which makes me sad because like that's who you are and you should be proud of that, and you're not annoying. You're not. People care what you have to say. So the easiest way for you to get comfortable with your voice is actually to record what you have to say and listen back to it. So like I said, no one ever has to hear this. So you could be like, I'm a podcaster. This is what I do. This is my topic. This is who I talk to. I interview da-da-da. I am speaking to blah, blah, blah. And that will help you get in the mindset of actually being a podcaster. So, which that's really fun. And I think you're going to get really excited from that point. So that's just to talk out your idea and have it set in stone. Now, the next step is a 3-in-1 step of recording, editing, and actually publishing. So this is once you're ready to go, you have your idea, you maybe have connected with a few people that you want to interview and you've actually done those interviews. You can record on Zoom is what I always do. And then I edit in Adobe Audition. And then my publishing platform is Spreaker. All of these will be in the show notes if you are looking for these. Now, I am using Adobe Audition because, like I said, this is what I do full time. So I pay a price to be able to edit on an incredible software. But if you're just starting, you can definitely find like a cheaper editing platform and go from there. So once you've recorded, edited, published the episode, which I know there's a lot in that, but that's kind of like the basis of like what you have to do. And so if you have like more detailed questions on how to actually do these things, you can always send me a message and I can help you with that and we can go from there. So the last step to your podcast journey launch is creating that excitement in your marketing. So what I do for my clients is I create them an audiogram each week along with some quote cards and just some general posts that they can make to announce that their episode is live. And so when you're first starting out, you need to think about your branding and what you want to be seen as. So the reason that you need to have social media when you have a podcast is because if these people who are listening to your podcast are spending like 30, 40 minutes, like an hour with you each week, they're going to want to learn more about you. So you need to be in charge of your personal brand that they are seeing when they search you on social media. If you have a podcast about like living a healthy lifestyle, and then someone goes on Instagram and your Instagram has been inactive since you were in college, and they go and find like photos of you drinking and partying and doing all these things, you're going to lose credibility really fast, like really fast. And so create the social media that you want to be perceived as. Again, business coaches, any entrepreneurial coach, this may be easy for you because I'm assuming you'll probably have like a brand built out, but for anyone who doesn't, take time with your marketing. I would really recommend creating a Canva account. I'll put this in the show notes as well, so then you can create your graphics in there. I created my podcast logo in there and all of my marketing. I pay for Canva and it is so easy to use and so incredible. And so I highly recommend it. canva.com. Then you can go and create all of your marketing assets and really like plan out what you're going to post. And I'm going to go on a rant for a second. When I was trying to build up credibility and experience in my business, I was doing a lot of free coaching calls, and I would connect with these people on Facebook and I would do like 4 a week. And so I was reviewing a lot of podcasts. I now charge for these because I have so much experience with reviewing podcasts and actually helping them see those results. But when I was just starting out in my coaching journey, I'm going to say it, I was honestly shocked with what some people were posting. I am a creative person, and using something like Canva makes it very easy to be aesthetic and actually like show yourself off in a good professional way. But like some of the graphics that I was seeing they looked like screenshots of a screenshot of a screenshot. And they were wondering why their business wasn't growing and people weren't listening to their podcast. You have like seconds to catch someone's attention. You have seconds to draw someone in. So if you have a Instagram full of information and graphics that look good, that are actually visually pleasing, you will be able to attract those people in. If someone comes to your page and you have photos of who knows what next to other photos of who knows what, people are not going to be drawn in. They're going to leave your profile. So that's just something to keep in mind with your marketing. If you're putting an effort with it, it will be easy to create. Pick your brand colors, pick your brand fonts, pick the vision that you want. So like if you want a clean aesthetic, you're going to want to go with a lot of like whites and neutral tones and earth tones and things like that. If you're looking for like a girly girl aesthetic, you're going to want to go with pink and sparkles. And if you're going for just like a neutral podcast, who knows what, you're going to create like your own branding. And this is, another spot where I help a lot of people, but this is more important than a lot of people do give it credit as. This is probably how people are going to find you on social media. They're going to come across your Instagram post. Maybe you post a reel and it goes viral. And people are like, oh, what is this podcast? This looks pretty cool. You want them to click on your profile and be invited in. So it's just something to keep in mind. I know that sounds a little harsh, but hey, if I was, sugarcoating everything, no one would see growth. And so that's just the truth when it comes to marketing. It matters a whole lot. So those were the 6 steps that I wanted to go through about how to start a podcast. I have a downloadable version of this. I will put the link in the show notes, and it's just like a podcast launch checklist. And it is pretty great. But since I have a goal of helping 50 people launch their podcast in 2023, well, 49 now because I already helped one person, I want you to be able to start the podcast of your dreams. I want you to show up as the professional that you are. I want you to show up as the business owner that you are. And I want you to really like show off to people that you are capable of having a podcast, because having a podcast is not easy. I remember when podcasts were blowing up left and right. It seemed like everyone and their moms had a podcast, but not everyone and their mom has a podcast anymore. A lot of people drop off. So you are fully capable of having this incredible podcast, and I really want you to see that. And so I am offering $300 off my podcast launch program, where together we do all of this, and I handle the tech side for you, and then you get this amazing result. You get to be the marketing, podcasting, business professional that you have always thought of yourself as. So if you're interested in taking advantage of this $300 off discount, send me a message. I'm offering this discount until the end of January, but if you find this discount from this podcast after January of 2023, I will honor it. So just send me a message, say like, hey, I heard your podcast. I want to claim that $300 off. Let's get me a podcast started. I will help you. So you can find me on Instagram at Espresso Podcast Production. You can find me on Facebook as well. You can email me. That is hello@espressopodcastproduction.com. And of course, you can see my wonderful website where you can download that podcast checklist that I mentioned, as well as contact me and see more about like my experience and all of those things. That is espressopodcastproduction.com. So I'm excited for you to get excited about this, and 2023 is your year. So with that, I'll see you next week in another interview episode. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Employee to Boss podcast. If you made it to the end of this episode, I hope that you implement the actionable steps from this week's experts so you can get started with your business today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Employee to Boss podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps more than you could ever imagine. Remember, a little progress each day leads to big results. We come out with a new episode every Tuesday. To access our show notes, transcripts, and courses, please check out espressopodcastproduction.com.